When most people think of track and field, they think only of the track element and not of the field element. They think of things like hurdles, sprints, or distance races, and not shot put, high jump, or discus. The discus throw was first seen in ancient Greece, which is a show of technique which is not just a show of strength, it's a show of finesse and technique. This is seen in an article titled Discus Throw, A History and Evolution. It says the discus throw is an ancient athletic event that has its origins deeply rooted in the history of ancient Greece. This form of the sport dates back to as early as 5th century BC and was an integral part of the Greek athletic tradition. The importance of this speech is to help deepen the audience's understanding of the technique behind the discus throw. The discus throw is an art that requires very solid technique and extensive knowledge of the subject. I have competed in track and field for 4 years, 3 years in high school where I threw shot put and discus, and 1 year at Messiah where I've thrown shot put, discus, hammer, and weight. I will be discussing the discus technique and explaining how to properly execute the throw. I will also be discussing the science behind the throw itself. So what is good discus technique? According to Throws University, the proper technique is called the rotational technique, or the spin. The spin allows you to get across the 2.5 meter circle as fast as possible. You start by entering the circle from any side you would like, and you line yourself up facing the back of the circle. You then put the discus in your right hand if you're right-handed, and in your left hand if you're left-handed. You start by swinging your dominant arm back to get a stretch across your chest, and when you get to the farthest point of the stretch, you then can start your throw. This is when you shift your weight over to your left side, and you kick with your right leg to accelerate everything around to get to the middle of the circle. Once you get to the middle of the circle, you then plant your right foot as quickly as you can, and you get your left foot around and land in what's called a power position. From here, you take that speed that you just accelerated with and generated to get your hip out in front of your right shoulder and bring everything through and finally release the discus. You have to make sure that when you release the discus that it comes out flat and not upright, because it needs to be as aerodynamic as possible. Speaking of aerodynamics, there's more than just technique behind discus. There's also science that you need to know. To understand this science, it is explained well in a video by KGW News. A physics professor at Linfield University and his student, who is also on the track and field team, explained this well. They explain that the discus throw uses a lot of wind resistance. The angle of the discus throw helps the wind resistance because if the air moves faster on the top side to keep it in the air for longer amounts of time. When throwing the discus, you want to get the perfect release angle where the discus moves in the air faster on the top side to keep it in the air for longer amounts of time. You can think of the discus the same way you think of a top. When it gets to the end of its spinning, it starts to wobble and eventually stops. The men's discus has a uniform weight of 2 kilograms and the women's discus is 1 kilogram. But the distribution of the weight can change. An article by Nike titled Everything to Know About the Discus Throw in Track and Field explains, in Olympic competition, the men's discus has a diameter of 22 centimeters and weighs 2 kilograms or 4.4 pounds. The women's discus has a diameter of 18 centimeters and a weight of 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds. If the weight of the discus is evenly distributed, it will be easier to initially release but will not fly as long. If the weight of the discus is mostly in the rim, the initial release will require more speed, but the discus will stay in the air longer. Today I have explained the proper technique behind the discus throw and the science behind it. This is why the discus throw is an art that requires a very solid technique and extensive knowledge on the subject. Even though many people think the discus throw is a show of strength, it is really a show of finesse and knowledge.